What's up, my community? If it's your first time, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. My name is Dia, and I would like to introduce you to a new segment I'm adding to my channel called Let's Chat, where I will be sitting down with various guests talking about a wide array of fun topics. Now, let me take a pause for the cause and say Happy Women's History Month. Now, as I kick off this first episode of Let's Chat and celebrate women's history, I am excited to have a conversation with a wonderful, dynamic woman talking about a topic that I think is important to, well, most of us, and that's the topic of relationships. So I invite you to grab your tea, grab your coffee, get comfy, and let's get into it. Yolanda, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
Awesome. Doing really good today.
Perfect. Well, I am so glad. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. I think we're going to have some fun today. And before we jump into our discussion, I wanted to start off with a little something fun that I didn't prepare you for. So I want to ask you, would you rather question? Okay.
Oh my gosh. This is my son. He asking me would you rather questions all day. He's 8. So I at least am answering, I say about 5 questions a week.
Basically, I'm one of your kids now, I think is what we're saying. Okay, well, hopefully I can make this one fun or maybe a little thought-provoking. So, would you rather have the ability to change something in the past or see into the future?
I would see into the future. Do I get to change it? No, I would want to see into the future.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that sometimes in my mind, I sort of think like, oh, what if I changed something in the past and it could have made something better in the future? But one of my favorite quotes is Dr. Martin Luther King. And he says, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever we do, we have to keep moving forward. So,
right.
To the future, I'm with you. I'm with you. So you guys, I had the opportunity to meet Yolanda and her husband, James, when I started school at Appalachian State University back a few years ago. I ain't gonna date me.
Well, I'm gonna date you. I'm gonna do it. This year is my 20th college graduation year. So undergrad, 20 years this year.
Well, I'm gonna say, so whenever I started, Yolanda and James, they were upperclassmen. So it ain't 20 years for me, but I ain't far behind them, obviously. But that is okay. I tell you, it was a privilege. And I thank God, when we meet people, we don't realize sometimes, what part they're going to play in our life. But I'm always so grateful to God for the relationships he's allowed me to cultivate over the years. And James and Yolanda, although we don't stay in communication on a regular basis, I'm just always so grateful when I have an opportunity to connect with them and to connect with Yolanda. And Yolanda is a powerhouse, you guys. So I'm going to jump right on into this conversation. I had the privilege of watching you guys during an interview that you had with Anthony O'Neill talking about traditional marriage. And some of the things that you guys said, it made me smile while I was watching it, and I am a recent, married lady. And so I'm new to the game. We're just going to be coming up on 2 years in April. And so, some of the things that y'all said, it just made me smile. And one of the things that I love that I heard y'all say is that marriage isn't work as much as working on you is work. And that is something that before I ever got married, and I would hear people say, marriage is work. And it just sounded like such a task. It's like, well, darn, is it really worth it? Where's the people that's just joyfully married? Obviously I know there's not always joyful moments, but just joyfully married, just genuinely joyfully married, you know? And so listening to you guys talk through that and bring out that point was just amazing. There was another thing that I heard you say that I was like, I want to talk about this. Now, this idea of boss chick, and also, you know, and you talked a lot about being a traditional wife. And you mentioned at one point when you met your husband, James, that you were what's maybe considered a boss chick. But then over the course of time, you have now evolved into this amazing traditional wife. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. So as we jump into this conversation, Yolanda, I will allow you to go ahead, tell us a little bit more about yourself, anything you want our viewers to know, and also about your amazing business that you have with your husband, Married by Design.
Yes, definitely. Well, I am Yolanda Penn, and I am married to a wonderful man. His name is James Penn Jr., and we have been married this year in May will make 16 years. We met in college. I was a senior, and he was a freshman, and we dated all through his undergrad and my grad. So, a big decision in me staying at Appalachian State was that he was still there, and I was not leaving that mountain without him. So we started dating my senior year, and from there, everything just really seemingly clicked. And my senior year, that was in 2002. So we have been together since 2002, and it all just added up. And so back in 2016, so we had been married several years, and my husband and I have always been in business together. And by always, I mean even when we were dating. My husband was a magician in college, and I was his assistant. And so we really enjoyed that time together. We've always worked together, and we've always worked together successfully. And once we got older and we were married, we had achieved success in business. And several people that were married came to us and said, I need y'all to come and talk to our group. I want you to come and talk to this association about how you work with your partner. You know, tell people how hard it is and how y'all make it through. And every time somebody came to us and they approached us in that energy, we were like, it's not hard for us. So Marriage by Design, our organization is Marriage by Design, and it came about very naturally. It wasn't like we were seeking to talk to people that were married. People asked us to come and speak at their different events and speak because they were having issues with couples in the organization that were married and working together. And so in 2016, we started Marriage by Design. And once we started Marriage by Design, we were on Facebook for, I don't know, we have now, 60 something plus episodes on Facebook. But we were early to the game. And so we were live streaming weekly and all that kind of good stuff. But that did not really hit to about 2019, 2020 when YouTube live stream became popular. And we stopped in 2019 because we were bringing another little one in to the world. And so November 2019 is when we stopped. And actually, it was 2019 sometime. I know we stopped 3 or 4 months before she was born. And our mommy hard is what I call it. And so for the first 2 years, I'm really taken out of commission. I dedicate a lot of time to that particular child and family, the rest of the kids as well. And so I nursed her until she was 2 years old. I nursed all my kids until they were at least 2. And just being able and knowing myself, I did not want to dedicate that time back to Marriage by Design until actually I was able to do so. And so that is when we came back on the scene. Anthony O'Neill was the first time we came back on the scene. And we started there. So that's kind of a short version of Marriage by Design. But weekly, we do YouTube, 8 p.m. every Sunday. We go live. And I can give y'all more detail about that towards the end when I give all the stats. But that is who we are. So I am one half of Marriage by Design.
That is awesome. And I think it's amazing that you guys not only are able to be joyful together in marriage, but that you can actually be joyful together in business. Because you hear that. You hear people say, honey, I could never work with my husband. I could never work with my wife, you know? That's amazing.
Well, it takes good leadership. James is an awesome leader,
Mhm.
and he has worked on his leadership skills. He was a great leader when we were dating,
Mhm.
but he has read, studied, and learned. I believe that men are have a leadership in them, because I truly believe in gender roles. And for my husband, his gender role is to protect, provide, and to lead. So he
Yeah.
already has leadership that is built in, but you have a certain level that you're going to have to cultivate. And
Yeah.
so he's led organizations, hundreds, tens of thousands of people. And so, as far as leading us in our household, he learned that early on when he didn't have an organization like that. When we had just newly got married and he had mentorship from other people, he started learning how to even lead better. And so he has some skin in the game. He has learned it. He still continuously is learning, changing, and growing. And that's a big tenet of Marriage by Design. We don't work on each other. We personally develop. We
That's
work on self. I cannot change my husband. My husband cannot change me. I work on me. I know where my shortcomings are. That's what I work on. And I grow from that. If you're the same person you were last year, there's a problem. You should be growing and changing. And when you are married, you should be growing and changing together. And it can be done separately. Like, I have stuff that I'm working on that my husband isn't working on. A lot of
Mhm.
marriages I have seen dissolved because one person went on a personal development journey, it started changing and growing, and the other person did not. And so they woke up and were two different people, and they are
Mhm.
no longer married. So I've seen it happen to where people start growing and changing, and the other person doesn't, and they're no longer together.
That's awesome. And I heard something said recently, and I'm trying to remember where I heard it. But they were saying that when you say I do to a person, make sure you're saying I do to multiple people. But there, because you do, like you said, you evolve and you change over time. And so when you say I do, you have to be willing to say I do to all of the individuals that person is going to evolve into, hopefully evolving to better, and that we're all evolving to better and not worse, because that would be hard.
Right.
But that's a very good point, and I love that, because I remember when I was dating, and I said to myself, when I meet a person, if the things that I don't like about them are things that are a deal breaker for me, I'm not going to try to make them become the person I want them to be. I'm just going to say, nice to be friends, and keep it moving. Because, like you
Right.
said, we can't change people. And so we
Right.
can only work on ourselves. And so I love that. I love that.
Yeah, those are called red flags. And
Yeah.
a little side note, if you see the red flags, run. But not only you should be vetting who you're dating to marry.
Mm.
The men in your life should be vetting quickly, and you get them involved in whoever you're dating. This is only if you're dating for marriage. Now, if you're
Yeah.
dating just to date and you out here playing around with your body, you playing around with your heart, you playing around with your soul, have at it. But if
Yeah.
you're dating to marry, if you're dating to go into marriage in a committed relationship, the men in your life with character, again, the
Mm.
men in your life with character should be
Mm-hmm.
involved in the process. And it shouldn't be, oh, we've been dating for 6 months. We've been dating. Oh, you like me? Okay, you need to meet my dad. You like
Mm-hmm.
me? You need to meet my uncle. You like me? You need to meet my pastor. You like me? You need to meet whoever it is in your life that is part of that process, because us as women, we're emotional. I want to like you.
Mm-hmm.
I like you for some reason. I want to like you. So some of those different red flags may not be jumping out to you, but a man could quickly identify within a short amount of time, whether it's the first time we meet, third time, fourth time, whatever it may be, they can quickly identify, oh, okay, no, this is not who it is. And I can let go quicker when we're dating and I'm
Yeah.
not involved emotionally and physically with you if I'm on this journey of marriage after you have had them vetted by the strong men of character in your life. But if you're waiting 6 months, like the modern world tells you, like society tells you, oh, let's slow down. I don't need to meet your dad. I don't need to meet your family. I don't want you to meet my dad. I don't want you to meet my family. We're just friends. We're just having a great time. But a
Mhm.
great time will get you messed up.
That's
Your
right.
emotions anybody is gonna get you messed up.
That is so true. I think we've all been there. I think
Yes. I think now. See, I think a lot of people have been there, but as our 4 kids, they ain't gonna have to do that because we are setting.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. We already are identifying candidates. This is your pool of people to choose from.
Hey, take it back to that prearranged marriage. Why not?
Right. And I'm not saying force. We're not going to force these people on you.
Yep.
By any means. But I know this family. I know who this is. They did it back in the day and they didn't even call it anything. 50 years ago, when you were courting, your grandmother would tell you, oh, no, we don't mess with the Smiths. And you didn't mess with the Smiths anymore because they knew about the Smiths. But in modern society, we have just decided, oh, we can do everything on our own. I'm 20 something years old. I have the knowledge to make and decide that this is going to be my potential partner for life.
Yeah.
Like, luckily, James and I, it was a lot of luck involved because we started dating early, got involved with feelings and everything else early on. But somehow with character, because he was very high, I have high character, we had character. So that worked for us. Yeah. But we made so many different missteps that our kids won't have to make because we've learned those missteps and we are able to guide them through it. And so it's going to be exciting as that time comes. Our oldest daughter is 13. We have regular conversations about marriage and dating and home life and being a mom and all that kind of stuff. And so we do with the younger ones as well, but not to the level that we do with her. So it's all a preparation stage. You all and continuously, your child should be prepared for the next level. You should be preparing them. So that's what we do here.
That is, I love that. I think it's amazing because I think about as Angel starts getting older, there are certain conversations I want her to hear from me and her dad first before she hears it from anybody else. Because there's a lot of poo out there. And I want you to know what we stand for in this house before anybody else has a chance to get to you.
Exactly.
Well, so I want to jump into this conversation also about as we talk about, dating and getting into relationships and all of these things, and we learn things as women, especially Black women, that we think are supposed to help us, but sometimes they could be detrimental. And so there was one thing that you mentioned during that interview that when you and James met, that you were maybe what's considered a boss chick, but now you've evolved into a traditional wife. What is your definition of a boss chick, and what are some misconceptions in your opinion that we may have about being this boss chick?
Okay. So I was a baby boss chick. I was still in college. So I was trying. I was working towards it. Oh, I was on that trajectory of being a boss chick. So starting off with the definition of a boss chick. So I'll define what that is to me. It is first, not the person. I don't want to tear down any or anybody, our sisters or anything. Is the mentality. It's the mentality. So the boss chick, above all, is concerned with self first. Above all, it's about self. It's about what can I get? What can I do? What luxuries can I have? And how much stuff I can accumulate. That is the boss chick mentality. And when you are wanting to be mate with somebody else, when you want a significant other, a husband, as a boss chick, how can I just consider and be involved with myself? How do I come first every time? How does my career, how does the stuff I want, the vacations I want to take, the purses I want, the cars I want, and all these other luxury items come before the person I have decided to be with, and that's my husband? How does all of that come before? So, and then you carry this attitude of this air of, this is what I want, this is how I want to accomplish it. And then you have some people that are independent and they want to be boss chicks. You can be an independent boss chick and not, if you are going to be a boss chick, please be independent. Please don't bring anybody else into that nonsense. So if that is the case and you want to go and have all those different things and you want to be alone and not have a spouse or have children, then do what thou wilt. But if you are wanting to be a wife and if you're wanting to be a mother. You
Mhm.
cannot do that in good conscience and still be a boss chick. Luxury stuff should not be above money, career, and luxury items should not
Mhm.
be above any particular person, your husband first, and your kids. That is the definition and how I would define a boss chick. And it really is this desire to get more stuff and have more stuff. That if that is the forefront of what you're going after, then
Mhm.
that is how I would define it. I believe it's been talked down from the generations, as far as a boss chick. So the misconceptions I would say is that it's okay to be a boss chick. Number
Mhm.
one, it really truly is not okay. When
Mhm.
again you're putting yourself and your self desires above somebody else, meaning your husband first, because ideally you would be married before you have children. So if you're putting that above, your husband, all this stuff that you want, and then if you're putting that above the children and everything else, your career is first, the stuff you
Mhm.
want is first, and everything else goes to the back burner, then that is being a boss chick. All the songs, all the women independent, throw your hands up at me, black girl magic, all this kind of stuff. We don't even allow our 13-year-old daughter to associate with anything with black girl magic. Why? Because that teaches I am independent and I don't need anybody. It
Mhm.
teaches go after what you want and don't worry about anybody else. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of the boss chick culture came out of a desire and need for our mothers to push us ahead in the career force. And so for me, my mom told me, early on, because she dealt with some trauma in her past, and she
Mhm.
told me, don't depend on a man for anything. Go get your education, because she believed that men will truly fail you. So go
Mhm.
get your education so that in case you are failed by a man, you still have something to fall back on. And so
Yeah.
we tend to take that all the way to the opposite end. It's rarely balanced in most stuff. And
Mhm.
so because she grew up in that traumatic situation, and she saw me witness some of that trauma with my biological father.
Mhm.
She was concerned for me and just told me to go get whatever it was. And because of the trauma that I dealt with, I was like, oh, I'm going to go get everything that I need to go get and not worry about, who feelings I got to hurt, who I got to step on, where I got to be. So even in other relationships that are outside of romantic relationships or family relationships, a lot of times the boss chick mentality is I don't care where I have to step, who I got to step on. I'm still going to go get what is mine. And so
Yep.
you burn a lot of bridges that way. And one day we all going to need somebody and want somebody. We hope that trauma or drama or anything doesn't hit us, but we all going to leave this earth one day. And do
That's
you
right.
want to be leaving the earth by yourself and alone because of decisions you made with a boss chick mentality?
That's so good. And my thought is that the whole idea of being a boss chick, where I mean, personally, where I think it might have came out of quote unquote good intentions in terms of like making sure that we don't get hurt, like you said, like your mom, because I remember my dad growing up all the way until I was an adult. He would always say, and excuse my language, people out here, but my dad, he'd say, don't you worry about no nigga, you better go out here, get your own stuff, get your own house, get your own car, get you a job. Cause if he start acting up, you can kick him out. Yeah, that was how my dad taught me, or at least those are the things I would hear my dad saying to me. And so I feel like a lot of women, especially in this society where men are, we're used to men making more money than us and all those kinds of things, it's like, well, I'm going to make sure I'm a boss chick, that I'm the one that's the CEO running this company, that I'm the one that's, and where it came out of a place of being like, I'm not going to be second place to men anymore. I'm going to make sure that my voice is heard, that my talents are seen, that I'm getting compensated when I'm supposed to. But that, just like anything that can have good intentions initially, it starts to be take to the extreme. And now we walking around here and like, honey, if you can't come up to my level, I'm a boss chick, then we can't even have a conversation. You ain't no good for me. And it starts to put this whole different spin on it. And it's just like, but is this going to be the best way to try to enter into a relationship with another person, because you're already looking down on other people that you feel like might not be on your level. And unfortunately, sometimes this is what causes the demise for us, especially as Black women, with trying to be in successful relationships. So we have to find that balance where it's like, yes,
Right.
it's absolutely okay for whatever your endeavors are for you to go after them, but for us to also remember that we can't use that as a gauge in how we're going to respect other people.
Right.
So very good. So now, okay, so you said you were on the trajectory to that, but now
Yes.
life has spun you into this amazing opportunity to be a traditional wife, and being a mom to your children. So what is your definition of being a traditional wife, and how does that differ from being a modern wife?
Very good. Very good. So I went from baby boss chick to when James and I were dating about in 2003, I switched to a modern wife. So
Mm-hmm.
from 2003, we got married and so I wouldn't say I switched to a modern wife. I switched to being modern because I wasn't a wife until 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2005, we entered into marriage and I was a modern wife, but I wanted to be a traditional wife.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Because James and I were introduced to an opportunity through network marketing. And I don't know, y'all may know the name. It was a long time ago, Amway. We got
Yeah.
involved in Amway. Quickstar was like the same thing as Amway. They just changed the name for a little bit. But we got involved in that. And it was the single-handedly best decision for our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Why, you may ask? Because that is when our personal development journey began heavy. What we
Mm-hmm.
learned from them, we didn't make any money. We didn't make any money. We lost money in Amway. We were in that organization. We did that for 2 years. We lost money. But we had mentors. We're just getting married and we were
Mm-hmm.
engaged at that time when we got started. And we had mentors, 3 Black couples that were married that were mentors to us. And we started our journey of personal development right then. Every day we read for at least 15 minutes. Every single day we listened to audio. This was back in the day when we had tapes and CDs. So we listened to CDs.
God.
And there was no YouTube that you was watching online for your personal development, no
YouTube
podcast.
University, like they call it. YouTube University.
There you go. There was no YouTube University. It was CDs. It was all of that. And so we started consuming stuff to better ourselves. And I can remember situations where I would go to the ladies that were married, that were my mentors. One in particular, I went to her and I said, James, we newly married, or almost married. And I was like, James is never home. He's always gone after he gets off work. He was going to build our business that was on the side, so that become our main income, and then we could both come home. And so the goal was always for me to be a stay-at-home wife and mom. It wasn't called traditional back then. I just wanted to be home. I wanted to be building with my husband something that we could have as a legacy for our family. And so I just knew I wanted to do that. And I remember complaining to my Amway, it was called Upline, but I was complaining to my mentor. And I said, James is never home. He's not here. And I'm kind of getting tired of it that we're just newly married, or we're just about to be married. We just got this house. And now, he's not here. And she's like, why don't you go with him? She's like, you should. He is out here working on y'all dream. He's out here to build y'all dream. Why don't you go with him? And I was like, oh, okay, I should go with him. And so I didn't go. I had enough sense not to go and ask one of my girlfriends. I didn't go and ask somebody else whose relationship I did not want mine to be patterned after. I went and asked my mentor, who I was taking her advice. Even if it was uncomfortable and it hurt, I still took her advice. I went and took her advice, and she told me to go with him. And so I did. And we started going together, and we started building together. We were selling together. We were talking to people together. And so we started growing there. So it's big when you are first getting started in marriage and you feel like, oh, I got to be out here and I need to be doing it all by myself. Society will tell you to do it by yourself. You don't need anybody else. And that's not the case. You need mentors Typically, it should be your parents who are your mentors, but a lot of times it's not going to be your parents. A lot of times it may be somebody else whose marriage you want to look like. You want your marriage to be patterned and look like somebody else's marriage. Like, wow, they have something there. So that's what you want to get. Whether you reading their books, you talking to them personally, or whatever it is, you want to have them. And I think a lot of times we miss that. And so that's when I knew that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And that stay-at-home mom was not realized until actually 2012. So I was a modern wife all the way up until 2012. And that never was our desire. I wanted to get home before we even had our first child. But I actually did not get home until she was 3 years old. And the crazy part about it is I used to cry. When I first went back to work, I would cry on a regular basis. And I worked 10 minutes from my house at that time. And I would cry all the way to work because I wanted to be with her. And I wanted to be with her because that was my child. She came out of my body. And I wanted to be nursing her. I wanted to be the person that was supporting her. I wanted to be her comfort. My heart actually hurt. And so fortunately, I only lived 10 minutes away. It wasn't an option. And we decided we were not going to be putting our daughter in daycare. And so I went and I stayed in my job full time. James came home and he started working full time on our business because we knew if I came home that there was never going to be a time when both of us was going to be able to work on our family business. So for the short term, and we tried to make it as short as possible, James was at home and he was working on our home business, building that. He was building our family legacy, holding our daughter on his lap. She's crying. I'm at work crying and pumping milk. He brings her to me on breaks. She actually, just how unnatural it was in that time, she actually changed her eating habits.
Wow.
She would not take a bottle. So James had to bring her to me on my 15-minute break and I nursed her. I went home on lunch. I was home for lunch for an hour. And so she drank milk. I nursed her for an hour. He brought me her back in the afternoon on our 15-minute break. And then when I came home, it was like I nursed her almost all through. As soon as I hit the door, I was nursing her. And of course, she would stop nursing at some point in time. But for those first 6 to 9 months when I was at work, it was around the clock. It was like, okay, we're round the clock nursing through the night. And as she got older, I don't know, maybe 5 months or so, I went back to work when she was 3 months. She would take a little bit of milk from the bottle, but that child hated the bottle. And she was like,
not mama's breast.
Huh?
She said, this is not my mama's breast.
Exactly. And she was the only of the 4 kids that we have that I wasn't home when she was an infant. When we had our son, he was born in 2013. I came home in 2012. And so after 2012, we just started having more and more kids. So when you get home, women, if you work the job and you go home, just know more babies coming. So
that's the key. If you want more children, go home.
Go home. And the crazy thing is James and I both are home. And so he doesn't leave and he hasn't left since, I don't know, 2012 and worked a job. And so we've always had home business. And so we've always been in the house together, doing stuff. I got the kids, homeschooling, all that kind of good stuff. And he's working throughout the day at home. So it's been a wonderful journey. I wouldn't want it any other way than being a stay-at-home mom, being a wife. So I'm a wife, I am a mother, and then I'm an entrepreneur third. And in that order, I'm a wife first. James and I got married and we had these kids, right? But these kids are going to leave us. Can you believe they are going to leave us? And then it's just going to be us again. So I'm a wife first, and then a mother, and lastly, entrepreneur, business owner, whatever you would like to call it. But that's how I classify it: wife, mother, then entrepreneur. And as a wife and mother, I give that time to being first. So I think one of the questions you asked earlier was kind of how do I define being a traditional wife? And I did want to touch on gender roles. So a big part of the traditional wife model is gender roles. And we have these roles for a reason. They're equally important. A lot of people are like, oh, you believe in gender roles? Oh my gosh. They're equally important to make the ship work. You
Yes.
have a captain, right? And then you have, I don't know if it's called a co-captain. I'm gonna look this up, but I don't know it yet. I don't know if it's called a lieutenant or whatever else. But one person is running the show. One person, and you follow who that is. You believe in their leadership and you follow them. So my husband's role is to be a leader. He is to protect, and he is to provide. And a lot of times women get hung up on the provision part of it. My husband's role is to provide a basic living of life. People are like, how can you do that? Oh, you both got to work in order to be able to maintain in this society. That is incorrect. The luxuries, meaning stuff that is outside of shelter, food, and education. All of the other stuff, all of those different things are luxuries. We have been able, and we have made it when I came home, and there were ups and downs, lows and highs when you are an entrepreneur. And of course, you get to a base level where you don't hit those lows. But there was a time we were working, one of James's biggest clients. I was pregnant with, it was either one of the last two. I believe it was Zuri or Zaria. And the company's like, we no longer need your help and we don't need your work. And so for several months, it was lean times there. But I didn't go back to work to get a job. We just cut stuff back. I went to couponing. I went into a major plan of, oh, okay, we need to cut back on this. Whatever it needed to be, you know, we got to have the internet, but what else can we turn off? We got several subscriptions. Let's turn those off. We're going to cancel the gym membership. It is whatever it takes so that mom can be home. And so I think that a lot of times we feel that we need this luxurious life, and not to say it's bad. I enjoy luxuries. I'm just not going to put luxury ahead of my family. I'm not going to put my desire for me to get my hair done, my nails done, that purse, that car, the bag, the shoes, the house, and all these other things that I want ahead of raising my children, ahead of being in my role as a support, as a nurturer, and as a comfort for my family. And so it was that important to me. It was that important to me when I decided before we even got married that we were going to homeschool our kids. That is not part necessarily of the traditional model. However, I do think it's a great idea when you homeschool your kids, especially when they're younger. But it was for me big that my son was never going to be taught by anybody else. My Black son was never going to be taught by anybody else other than me and my husband. I truly believe that when my son becomes older, a lot of the education he would have already learned. He knows how to read, write, do math. He's got to a certain level. A lot of that stuff is going to turn over to my husband because now he's learning how to be a man. And so that wasn't something, and I don't know if I'm going to step on some toes or whatever else, but that's not something that Miss Becky can teach my son. She can't teach my son how to be a man. And when he is spending 10 hours a day with Miss Becky, and he has only 4 hours left that aren't sleeping out a 24-hour day, how does that calculate or add up? And so it was that important to me when our little Black boys, or little boys in general, when they are, you know, drugged up, put on medicine for ADHD because they're hyper, because they can't, you know, sit still like a little girl. That's just not in their DNA and who they are. They need different outlets than women do. I truly believe we have more estrogen in our body. They have more testosterone. Testosterone leans for more energy. Maybe he needed to get up and have a break. Maybe he didn't need to sit there for an hour to do classwork. And so I truly think our school system is doing an injustice, very high level of injustice to our young Black boys, also to our little Black girls as well. I wanted them to not have the out of school teaching as well. When I have people tell me what's going on, the K-5 school buses in the back of the buses, that's an issue.
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare want to expose my children to being assaulted on the bus, to being molested on the bus, or any of those things. Now, let's say your kids don't ride the bus. You actually, you know, drop them off and take them to school. They were too precious to me for me to allow anything that I could not see to happen. My kids don't do sleepovers. Why? Because I can't see that far. Like, I can't. Now, if your little cousin want to come stay or whatever else, that's fine. But I can't. My children are not that far out of my sight because I don't know who else is going to be at your house, what's going to be going on, and all those different things. And my daughter's 13, and she's been invited to plenty of sleepovers through her track club, through neighbors, and different things like that. She was like, "Nah, my mama don't let me do sleepovers." Why? Because I don't know who's going to be in and out of your house. And so I just think we've become lax in a lot of different areas. And I just wasn't willing to put my kids in those situations where they were going to have to make a decision. And not saying that they could or couldn't, but I've known many scenarios where stuff has happened and we don't know about it, or we do find out about it. And now we're in therapy for what happened at somebody else's house, or what happened on the bus, or what happened in school. And so I just can't. It just wasn't on the agenda for me. And that's why I became a stay-at-home mom. And God forbid, Elohim forbid, consciousness forbid, creativity forgive, creation forbid. If something was to happen to our income and it was sell your house or whatever the case may be, I am that serious as I would go to, we a family of 6, a 2-bedroom apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment before my kids ever went to school.
And when I hear this, I'm like, this is serious commitment, to what your desires are. And I know that there are people out there that say, girl, you just doing too much, or you going too
I love it. I love the too much. I told my daughter this yesterday. I said, I don't want to be average. I said, you will not be average. I'm talking to my 13-year-old daughter. I said, I don't want what average people have. I said, we're on a mission to create a legacy that outlasts us, that outlasts you, and it's starting with James and Yolanda Penn. I cannot do what average people do and have what I want on a superior level. Therefore, whatever average people do, and this is average meaning the masses, whatever the masses do, I'm typically going to do the opposite. The masses go to bed at 10, 11 o'clock at night and watch an hour of news, for example. There is no way I will watch the news and put all that negativity in my mind about the shootings, the killings, the weather, whatever you watch it, CNN and everything else. I do keep myself educated on some of the different things that's happening in the world at a basic level. But until it is an alarming level, we would know. Everybody is on social media. You can catch up on that stuff on the news. But please tell me, what am I going to be able to do right here as Yolanda Penn on what's going on in Russia? Why do I need to know all the ins and outs about that and put that negativity in my mind when that's taking up space that could be used for something else? So back in 2003, 2005, we learned, why are we watching the news? You could be reading something positively that's going to impact yourself. And every situation of our economy with every president, no matter if it was Bill Clinton, if it was Trump, if it was Obama, and currently where it is, we have always flourished financially.
Yeah.
The president had no outcome on how much money we were making. There was no direct correlation to that. And so when it comes to elections and all this kind of stuff, I'm involved. I'm more involved in local elections. I will say that because I think that impacts us more than our larger presidential elections and stuff like that. The local elections do. And that really has an impact on stuff. But I'm not stressed or worried or debating and doing all this kind of stuff, taking up time in my day to deal with that, because I'm going to do the opposite of what the masses do, because I don't want what the masses have. I'm going to find out, what do I need to do to live like this? And if it's not there, let me use some of these skills, and I want to create that. And so our mission is to create a legacy that outlives us. Not just financially, but in knowledge. I want to pass down the knowledge that I have learned and the way I believe and the values we have through the generations, not just and let it end in the one generation. Because we've all seen where when that happens, the next generation, spends all the wealth. They, don't follow the values that you set up. And now your last name and you don't live on. And so I want to create a legacy that lives on, so that it impacts the Black families and the Black community, because we're big on that. We first start with our family, and then we can flourish out to the community.
Yeah.
But you got to start with the family first. Your family. Start with your family first. Get that intact, rolling, and then start building out to where you are affecting the community. So Marriage by Design is here to affect the community, to give you another option than what you actually see out there in modern society, to give you another option that traditional marriage does work.
Yep. The crazy thing is when I hear you saying about, well, building that legacy and, doing, having certain limitations like, if I can't see it, if, you ain't going over to stay the night with people. I remember growing up, my mom was that way. My mom, there was like maybe two people I could stay the night with, and that was my best friend because my mama knew her grandma. She knew her grandma, and she knew her grandma was just as strict as she was, and like one other person that was like a cousin, and that was it. And so when I hear this, I'm thinking to myself, my mother, whether she knew it or not, because maybe her intentions or her understanding wasn't necessarily like this is going to be a legacy, but she knew that no, there's certain things that I'm allowing that I don't want to allow you to go to someone that I don't know and start putting in you. That is not what I want put in you. So we're going to stay right here. They can come stay over here, but you're not going over there,
Right.
And so,
Right.
And I think that sometimes because we're in this progressive world, right? We're in this society now that is progressive, and you're supposed to be thinking more outside of the box, and you're supposed to be, doing things different than your parents did it. And don't get me wrong, there are certain things that, I look back and I'm like, okay, I might want to do that a little bit differently than how I was taught. However, some of those basic foundational things, like you said, that we've moved so far away from, even the idea of gender roles. Because I think about it, although I didn't necessarily know that this is what I was looking for in a mate, I realized that that's something that I wanted also. I wanted someone who I knew I could depend on to make decisions. At the end of the day, when there was a decision that needed to be made for us in our household, I didn't want to be the one that you're looking at me saying, so what we gonna do? I wanted someone that I could trust, knew how to make good decisions, and that could make those decisions for our family. Someone that I knew that at the end of the day, if I fall on hard times or whatever, you're gonna be able to pick up and run. You're gonna be able to take care of our family. You don't have any, those, I actually wanted those things. And thank God he allowed me to get that. And I think that we forget how important these things are because we're so focused on trying to stay progressive. We don't look like we're living in the olden times, but these are foundational things that mean a lot to our family. And like you said, that we can pass on as legacy to our children, because I want my daughter to know how important that is. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, this conversation has been so good that I did not want to cut it short. So I'm splitting it into two parts, where I will be posting part 2 of From Boss Chick to Traditional Wife next week, where Yolanda is going to expand a little bit more on how leaning into a traditional marriage and being a traditional wife could help to build and strengthen the Black community. So if you haven't done so already, I want for you to click the subscribe button below, click the notification bell so you are notified when part 2 is posted next week. And if you have not done so already, you guys, I want you to stop, take a moment, find a reason to laugh, and keep smiling. Until next time and always, stay blessed. See you next week.